This is A View from the Bunker. Now, here's Derek Gilbert.
Is it the collapse of cryptocurrency as we know it? That's straight ahead on A View from the Bunker. You have blessed us with your support during our first year in ministry. You literally make it possible for us to do what we do. And so as we prepare to head into a new year, we want to return the blessing to you. Through January, we've prepared a number of special offers at the Gilbert House store, and we're featuring the Red Wing Saga, Sharon's wonderful series of supernatural thrillers that teaches spiritual warfare through masterful storytelling with fascinating historical mysteries as the backdrop. Now, all 8 novels in the Red Wing Saga, a $160 value, can be yours for just $110, a savings of $50. You'll also find the Derek Gilbert collection, all 5 of my nonfiction books, a $100 value for just $70. Those are just 2 of the special offers available through January at our online store. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/store. And as always, we thank you for your prayers and your support. Fiat currency is bad enough, but is cryptocurrency even worse, or worse yet? Could it become the mark of the beast? Welcome to A View from the Bunker. I'm Derek Gilbert. If you're watching this program tonight on YouTube, that's our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Gilbert House. Thank you for doing so. If you would, please take a moment to subscribe and share this link around. But once you're done with that, if you would take a moment at some point down the road and download our app, our free app, which bypasses the gatekeepers of big tech, that will protect you in case we someday say something that might run afoul of those who are looking for things at which to be offended. And you know that will probably happen at some point. gilberthouse.org/app. You'll also find it at vftb.net. Check the top menu bar for the link. It works for iOS, Android, Amazon Kindle Fire phones and tablets, also Roku and Apple TV. So you can bring all of our content right into your device, whether it's your TV set directly, your smartphone or tablet. The advantage of taking the app into your tablet or smartphone is that it also includes a Bible app, an audio Bible app with multiple translations, plus a calendar of upcoming events and more. We're also uploading a lot of our classic programs, PID Radio, going back to 2005. And tonight, our guest was one of our very first interviews when Sharon and I began this podcasting adventure almost 18 years ago. At the time, he was coordinating the Ancient of Days Bible UFO conferences, bringing together people like Mike Heiser, the late David Flynn, Richard Hoagland, and many others to talk about what are those strange lights in the sky and how do we as Christians process them, and then doing it in Roswell, New Mexico, which has become a mecca of sorts, if you will, for those who see the UFO phenomenon as a spiritual thing. And trust me, for many, it really is. In fact, he wrote a book about his experiences as a contactee or an experiencer come sail away, and has coordinated one of the Roswell UFO conferences, officially for the city of Roswell. He's been there for a long time as our missionary to Roswell, actually ran for mayor in the most recent mayoral election in Roswell, New Mexico. Currently works his day job as a copy editor for Bitcoin magazine, so well placed to address the recent meltdown in the cryptocurrency exchanges and what's the difference between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole. How do we process this? It is our honor to welcome back to the program Guy Malone. Guy, I am guilty of conflating the term Bitcoin, or the name of the currency, Bitcoin, with cryptocurrency as a whole. What is the difference between Bitcoin and I'll put this in air quotes, cryptocurrency?
Excellent question. You're far from the only person guilty of conflating the two. I do it. We do it conversationally. So it's sort of both a technical answer and a philosophical answer. And I think the best picture I can do, I'm going to put you on the spot actually, and answer your question with a question. Derek, can you tell me what religion you are, please?
Yeah, I could say Christian, but then what exactly?
No,
you got to
Catholic.
You got to drill down. You got to drill down.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I think with your audiences, we can say, a lot of times if you're asked, well, I'm a Christian. Oh, you're a Catholic. No, I said I'm a Christian. Well, you're a Catholic. There's either Muslim or Catholic. Which are you? And just the head roll and the eye roll and the exercise. Bitcoin, not crypto, has the exact same dynamic that you need to unpack. Is that because, as you said, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. It's the first cryptocurrency. And a lot of people, and now there's 10 or 20, there's really closer to 20,000 new cryptocurrencies that have come. It's just a simple, you can literally cut and paste the code of Bitcoin, and then you can create Derek coin. Just the question is, will you, and that would be a cryptocurrency,
right.
By definition. But what Bitcoin did differently from a lot of them is that there's the 21 million cap. There's actually an issuance schedule of how much Bitcoin gets printed when. Bitcoin, one of the big questions in the legal world, SEC, is Bitcoin a commodity like gold or oil or grain? And the answer is that yes, it is. If you go to the SEC or if you're trying to classify something as a commodity or a security, you're probably very familiar with what's called the Howey test, which it asks a few questions and it determines, is this a company that I am investing in to where the efforts of the people that run the company, nothing to do with me, are going to determine whether or not I earn profit on this. So overall, in the last few years, Bitcoin more or less got the clearance from the SEC as this is a commodity. There is no CEO. There is no company. It's decentralized, meaning it's run from various places all over the world. There is no head of the snake or head of the dragon. You can't call Mark Zuckerberg in, or there is no one you can call in to Congress to account for Bitcoin's activities. It's a commodity. When you invest in gold, there's no one company that's responsible for the price of gold. And Bitcoin works the same way. The way I like to describe, if you're looking at Ethereum, Litecoin, Derek coin, Guy coin, XRP, SHIB, Doge, all these other things that you've heard of, or that your listeners probably have heard of, are they're all companies. They all have marketing departments. I've worked with a few of these marketing departments. I'd like to describe the difference on crypto, Bitcoin, is that as a friend, I will help you get into Bitcoin, and I know that we will still be friends 10 years from now because Bitcoin will still exist. My belief is that we'll be going up in price still 10 years from now. If I get you into a hot crypto such as Dogecoin or SHIB or Ethereum, whatever. To me, it's like it's like cable TV channels. MTV used to be hot until it wasn't. So much of your cryptocurrency realm now includes things that are not, or much of your crypto realm includes things that are not true cryptocurrencies. The AP definition I have to work with as a proofreader or a copy editor is that the AP will not allow you to abbreviate cryptocurrency with the word crypto because crypto is actually the long-standing AP definition for cryptography.
Okay.
Science that underpins the Bitcoin network is that it is a cryptographically secured currency. That's where the word cryptocurrency comes from. And it's easy to just shorten that to crypto. Hey, I have a new crypto. It's called Litecoin. I invented a new cryptocurrency. In our vernacular, we say that, and that's kind of, we get away with it. AP will not allow it because it's not actually the difference between a cryptographically secured currency and a digital currency like our US dollars in our bank accounts. Those are digital currencies, but they're not cryptographically secured. So when somebody invents or produces or puts to market a new cryptocurrency, if it is a currency, that's one thing. Conflating the issue even farther is something widely known as Ethereum is actually never designed to be a currency. It's a smart contract platform for whatever that means. People do trade in Ethereum. It has a unit price that goes up and down. But by design, it's not a currency. It does something else entirely. But now, back to the word crypto itself, in usage, That now includes Web3, NFTs, DeFi, and many areas that have nothing to do with currencies anymore. So when you use the word crypto in a sentence, you probably don't know that you're not saying cryptocurrency incorrectly. There's a whole field of new innovations, I will say, some good things, some bad things. Part of the reason we're talking today is because there's a lot of scam going on in the world right now, and there always has been. So much of the innovation in the crypto community has nothing to do with currencies, and just therefore you're not going to say crypto. Bitcoin kind of separates itself from calling itself Bitcoin and crypto. The only other analogy that I think works just as well as the Christian Catholic analogy is you kind of need a meme to do it, but you have two circles. One of them is all the fiat dollars in existence, and one of them is Bitcoin. It's a whole new asset class. It's not a government-issued fiat currency. It truly is a separate thing. Now, in your mind and in the mind of your listeners, when you say crypto, what you're really doing is you're picturing a big circle that has a little circle B in it. Like Bitcoin is a little bitty part of this huge crypto world. Not true. Because of the unique $21 million or 21 million cap of the number of Bitcoin that'll ever be issued, and the rules, the software, the assurances that all that runs smoothly. When you start talking about, we'll just say Litecoin, Ethereum, XRP, Dogecoin, Shift, in your mind, you conflate them because it's a new technology that you don't understand. So it all goes in the same box in our brains. Really, if you look at it as Bitcoin is 21 million capped, and by the definition of fiat, meaning it's just issued, it's printed out of nowhere, it has no backing, you realize that crypto is actually a tiny subsection of fiat. Crypto has no real rules or regulation going on right now. Every company and every individual can make their own rules and they can change them. Convincing you to invest in something that, without that foundation might be a little harder. But that's the difference. It's really not true that Bitcoin is part of crypto. It's truer to say that crypto nowadays is part of the fiat system that Bitcoin was invented to fix or to break away from with a new solution.
Okay. It struck me as just trying to make sense of the whole FTX collapse, the $36 billion collapse. And this week, as we're recording this right at the end of November, to timestamp this for people watching this in the future, we just got word that BlockFi, which is a cryptocurrency lending institution, another $10 billion collapse. There have been some others in the past, but the thing that struck me there, as you were talking, is that these are companies with CEOs. And when you are giving them your fiat currency or US dollars or British pounds or whatever, and investing with them to buy their tokens, FTX had its own FTT token. You're giving it to them, and you've eliminated the one big advantage that Bitcoin was based on, really, which is the decentralization. There is no CEO, as you say. It's a commodity. It's like, corn or pork bellies or wheat futures or something like that. Yeah. Whereas a token issued by FTX or a stable coin like Tether, something like that, you've got a company involved that can do certain things without telling you that they're doing it. And that is why, and in so doing, as there are other companies out there, I'm sure, that will come to light here in the weeks ahead, that got people to invest because people were trying to make a fast buck, trying to make something out of nothing, rather than looking at the advantage of a Bitcoin, which is outside the control of a company, a corporate CEO, or the fiat currency system controlled by central banks.
Yeah, no government, no central banks, no World Economic Forum, Christine Lagarde, or Bank of International Settlements. Yeah, they don't have any authority or technology or ability to influence what happens with Bitcoin. When you're asking Bitcoiners about the last few weeks, you have to remember, number one, as big as this FTX thing is, it's really not the biggest hack or scandal that's happened to Bitcoiners in general. You got to go back about 10 years ago, the Mt. Gox.
Oh, yeah. I'd
hack.
forgotten about that. Yeah.
I looked it up because we were going to be talking. That was 800,000 Bitcoin. That times roughly 16.5, that's over 13 billions that got just simply hacked. And to show you how early the technology was, when I say the word Mt. Gox was the name of the exchange, the history lesson where they got that name from was Magic the Gathering. They created the trading cards. They created a platform where those nerds could interchange their digital money and their swords. They could use their fiat to buy more swag for playing Magic the Gathering. And then when Bitcoin came around, you realized, oh, it's sort of the same thing. It's a digital token in a cyber realm somewhere. And yeah, we'll take your money and we'll store it for you. They didn't realize they were sitting on billions of dollars. They didn't build the technology. But that hack or that theft that was the one place in the world where if you were a Bitcoin buyer, that's where you held it. If you were not tech savvy enough, as none of us are, to have it on your own laptop wallet back then or phone wallet now. Nowadays, it's easier. But the point is 800,000 Bitcoin got stolen. 200,000 were recovered. And it took years for the Bitcoin community to more or less come back to that price-wise. I think one of your early questions had to do with, if Bitcoin has gone down this much, should investors be nervous? Yeah, I'm not going to give financial advice. I'm just going to say that 70 and 80% withdrawals have happened very frequently in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Often it is the result. What happened now is just called contagion, where dominoes start falling. One thing goes bad, you realize that there was all pretty interconnected. What's happened with this current one is it's a classic bank run or a rug pull, in the sense you mentioned FTX had their own token FTT. I don't know where he came up with the numbers to value this, but they were saying they were loaning themselves. They were taking loans in the $10 billion range, in the multi-billion dollar range, based on the amount of FTT they were holding as collateral.
Which they created,
which doesn't make sense in any world. This should not really be allowed. The thing is, they had balance sheets, they had numbers, and that they were able to say, here's what it's worth, and they got a loan. But the industry is so interrelated, is that this happened months earlier. The first time it kind of seemed to have started with Celsius, this big crypto lender, to where they promised you a yield, to where if you send me your Bitcoin, I will pay you 6% per year in Bitcoin returns. And everybody stops and, well, where does this yield come from? And people got kind of blinded with money. I said Celsius. They were the first one to crash, but it was like Celsius and what went with that? Three Arrows Capital was the big company, and then the Voyager app as well. The Bitcoiners use a phrase, not your keys, not your coins. Your private keys is the password, is the possession. When I say I own Bitcoin in my own control and possession, that I can send it to you without going through a third party. I don't store my Bitcoin on a third party platform like Celsius, like Alameda, FTX. I did use Voyager, actually, for a little bit of other stuff, because one company I worked with paid in crypto, we'll say. So I had to send it to Voyager and then convert it to dollars using my bank account. But what they were doing was they were amassing all of these wealth, but there was no real accountability or regulatory firm that would come in, what we in the Bitcoin world call proof of reserves. We have a January 3rd holiday to where we always say, take your coins off the exchange to prove that they are there in the first place. You can put them back if you want. The exchange will appreciate the fees coming and going, but there's a proof of reserves factor in Bitcoin, that every Bitcoin in existence belongs to an address somewhere, you or I, with no technical expertise, can look on the internet and see where it is. And if this company claims, say you just go to an exchange, Coinbase is a popular name, and say, I have 3 Bitcoin on Coinbase. Well, no, you don't have 3 Bitcoin. Coinbase has 3 Bitcoin that you gave them your fiat for, and you hope that they're keeping a good eye on it. But as is the law with U.S. banks, when you put your dollars in there, you don't really own that. It is legally their money at that point.
Right.
You're a creditor. We have what's called the FDIC dealing with banks and money, and that, you know, anything that you put in an FDIC insured bank is covered. That's true. Like if there was a bank run, this is what happened to FTX. It's just all of a sudden people started getting suspicious. People started pulling their reserves, whatever their asset was, Bitcoin, another coin or whatever, off of these exchanges. Turns out they were selling way more than they actually had to sell. They were just issuing, you could say paper IOUs, or you could just say numbers on a screen, to where now when I see, oh, Coinbase is holding my 3 Bitcoin, no, there's a computer screen of my account that says 3 Bitcoin. But if I go to Coinbase and say, give me my 3 Bitcoin, that's always going to be the question. Do they have it to begin with? In the Bitcoin community, proof of reserves and holding on to your own stuff. But the temptation now is that people are like, well, if I send my Bitcoin or other asset to this exchange, they promise me a yield. And it works like Gmail and Facebook, that the community in general was a little too slow to catch on. But when something is free, it's because you are the product.
Right.
All these companies, SBF was just the biggest one to get caught in a really big way, is they are taking what you give them and then they are playing with it. There's a quote I punched up for this that is part of the problem. Someone, his name is David Schwartz. He's one of these other crypto companies. Here's the problem with what happened with FTX, but it's happened many times before. Again, everything, we went from almost 70,000 to in April on a blood moon, by the way. I meant to ask you to ask Sharon. Both of these collapses happened under a blood moon eclipse.
Really?
I totally meant to send you the exact dates on this stuff.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, FTX, everything you're hearing about that was the recent blood moon. Well, the first big one in April was also under a blood moon, is that you have these people that are sitting on millions and then billions of other people's money. And us being human, the temptation to play with that money becomes unbearable. If you've got $25 million at your fingertips and no accountability, no regulatory agencies is what I mean, as to what happens with that money, they started playing with it. They started investing it. They started doing some really high risk, high reward yields. People started getting suspicious way back months ago. Among the Bitcoin community, what you might say the Bitcoin only or the Bitcoin maxi community, Corey over at Swan Bitcoin and many other people all over Twitter were calling this stuff out left and right. The question becomes, Dylan at Bitcoin Magazine tweeted, wait a minute, if random plebs, just anonymous idiots on Twitter can start calling out this bank run and this Ponzi scheme, why couldn't the SEC or Chain Analysis and the agencies that were played? This is all a very big winners, and regulation is coming. And what you're seeing with the collapse of FTX is there's kind of a fight or 2 or 3 schools of philosophy of what companies and what systems want to be on top when all of this clears in the next 5 or 10 years as we move into a much more digital society and the evil of CBDCs and stuff like that. But what I wanted to say is just that as soon as, where there's smoke, there's fire, people started smelling a little bit of smoke. Like, I'm going to pull my money off of that exchange. And then, I'm going to pull my money off of that exchange too, or my assets, my Bitcoin or whatever. Well, it was a classic bank run scenario. This is what ended Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, and Voyager back in April, March, May. And they reach a point where they say, because of market conditions, we are closing withdrawals, which means you can't convert your asset to dollars back to your bank account that you paid for them from, and you can't send them to a separate wallet. You know how sending Bitcoin works a little bit. We did it phone to phone, from me to you, but without going through a third-party exchange bank or government or anything like that, is that once people start pulling their money out really fast, all these CEOs that were gambling with customer funds gets exposed. And everybody's pulling it out too fast. They don't have enough time. You were hearing like Alameda, Three Arrows Capital, I need a $350 million loan to cover what's the bank run happening on my exchange. Over here, I need a $700 billion loan. That is what happened already in the spring and summer, and it's just happening again. And as you said, this story broke 3 weeks ago, and only today, FTX, another crypto exchange, announced bankruptcy. The degree to which all of these are interrelated and they're loaning each other's money. It's like, if we're all in this industry and, I'm sitting pretty and Derek, you're like, hey, I need to borrow 500 Bitcoin. I'll pay you 3%. You're going to turn around and go and offer that to Alameda at 4%. Alameda is going to offer it to SBX at 5%, who's going to offer it to Celsius at 7% to pay. It's a Ponzi scheme. All of these yield schemes or all of these yield platforms, they were literally just paying their older investors with newer investors' funds.
The classic definition of the Ponzi scheme.
Yeah. Twitter plebs started calling it out first. And again, what they refer to often as toxic Bitcoin maxis, who are the people who will say, Bitcoin only is the superior asset. It's the only one you should invest money in. And the people that study the heck out of the Bitcoin, the reason they arrive at that conclusion is because everything else ends in a scam and a big steaming pile of tears. And that's what's happened. It's happened with FTX. The thing is similar with this one. Like I said, you can view what's happening on a blockchain. If you are tech savvy enough, you can see, does this company really hold this money? So it brought up this huge question very early on. I think that's what I said. Dylan said that at Bitcoin Magazine is, wait a minute. If all these there's a company, Chainalysis.
Right.
Is one that as a service to governments and law enforcement, they monitor blockchain activity. They get paid multi-million-dollar contracts to monitor all this activity and report suspicious stuff for money laundering and stuff like that. They and a few other companies should have been able to tell, wait a minute, FTX and Alameda, this is not adding up. This is not worth $20 billion. Why are they using it for collateral for $10 billion? And what's happened is a little bit of a conspiracy in that maybe this was hopefully a planned contagion to just destroy crypto and Wall Street and the World Economic Forum and the Federal Reserve. They want to run the money and they don't like the fact that there's any competition.
Right.
The whole crypto has brought up some competition and stuff like that, especially when people are saying, in fact, SBX, Alameda, their firm, their document, I can send it to you, was offering, if you looked at this a year ago, was offering 15% annual interest with no downside. Have you ever seen an investment portfolio that was at least legal and regulated?
Legal and regulated.
Got away with saying there's no downside?
No.
Well, they were offering 15% yield because they were taking new people's money and giving it to the older people as yield. It got busted. But the thing is, many people in law enforcement should have seen that coming. The head of the SEC, Gary Gensler, met with SBF, Bankman-Fried, several times. It's in the calendar notes, which are public knowledge. They have met a few times in the last year. There's kind of like two wars or two schools. And I'm not talking about Bitcoin here. I'm talking about in the regulations. You've got the SEC, which a lot of people think they've got a little bit of a big head. They're being they're making a power grab. So when they are suing crypto companies like Ripple, which runs XRP, that one's been tied up for almost 2 years. They sued a smaller one, Library, and they said, hey, you're marketing securities here. These don't pass the Howey test. And we need you to come and register with the SEC. I'm keeping this as simple as I can. Is that the industry is fighting back, and they're saying, no, we are not security tokens. We, too, are a commodity. At some point, the SEC just said only Bitcoin and Ethereum qualify as commodities. They shouldn't have said that about Ethereum. It was very questionable because it's a company. Mm-hmm. There's an Ethereum Foundation that is also tied in with the WEF. Surprise, surprise. Goes all the way back to Elon's founder of PayPal days. But so you got these basically two huge things happening, and they both involve the SEC being a bit of a bully. They're accused of regulating by enforcement rather than making clear laws that honest companies and honest investors can follow, and they know what the rules are. They're still going back and forth for years over Bitcoin being a commodity. The CTFC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, has jurisdiction over it. Mm-hmm. They probably should on a few others as well. But the question is that you have on the one side of this battle, you have Ethereum, the Ethereum Foundation, JP Morgan Bank, and the World Economic Forum that are all pushing Ethereum right now, which is run on Amazon web servers. I think 70% of Ethereum is run on Amazon. So if you look at it, I said earlier, Ethereum is not even a currency. If you were to think of that as a currency, do you realize 70% of it running on Amazon? Jeff Bezos gets a note from the CIA to shut it down. Boom. That's not a healthy currency. It's a platform. It does other stuff. But like I said, you got Ethereum.
But it also suggests that the CIA is not going to do it. The fact that it's on Amazon. Yeah,
it's insert tinfoil conspiracy where appropriate in all of this.
Yeah.
I see in part in all of this. I don't see in full. Like I say, you've got Ethereum, JP Morgan, and that whole foundation over here wanting to run the money for the world. And over here, you've got the company called Ripple that I mentioned earlier, their currency XRP, which has had patents and has been working with Bank of America for years. So the question becomes, was this whole lawsuit against XRP, oh, hey, you're a security, you need to stop that. You've been selling unregistered securities the whole time. XRP says, no, sir, it is quite decentralized. It is run all over the world. Our company, like the analogy I gave with Bitcoin and gold earlier, there's no one company anymore that can really, you would say, is responsible for the price of gold. It's not like a stock. In a stock, you are standing away and you are trusting this company to go out and make money on your behalf, but you're trusting them. Gold, Bitcoin, they're just commodity. No one company is going to happen. But this XRP, well, they've got Bank of America and, checks notes, World Economic Forum on their side, too. So World Economic Forum they're going to win no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a battle for who's the money and then what's going to happen with the regulations. And this is where SBF came in. Wonder Kid, out of nowhere. His family is connected. And, if you or I sell $601 worth of stuff on PayPal or Venmo, well, the government's coming for us. How do you steal $10 billion?
Yeah.
Without being extremely protected? Well, so it's a regulations war right now. I think a lot of this crash had to do with either SBF, like you saw some headlines, the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, they're giving them really puff pieces. Like rather than saying Bankman-Fried stole $10 billion and that ruins his plans to have a nice day, the actual headline is something like FTX collapse thwarts Bankman-Fried's plan to save the world.
Ethical, what was it? Ethical altruism.
Yes.
Which basically is the ends justify the means. If I say that I'm going to invest in a more ethical, inclusive, diverse world, I can do anything. because it'll be okay.
Yeah, if I can, if you have the ability to do a meme or insert this in later, I'll send it to you. It's the perfect one. The ends justify the memes thing.
Mm-hmm.
Nice little caption where a little guy here and a little guy here. One guy steals the money and he goes, "Hey, that's my money." And then over here, you've got the press and the New York Times and everybody looking. And the guy that gets caught stealing goes, "Well, I was going to donate this to world peace." And then all the cameramen, and then he starts shaking it and he gives them all money. New York Times, Wall Street Journal. "Oh, he's here to save the world. He's like Jesus," is what it says in this cartoon. And meanwhile, the guy whose money was stolen sitting over there looking all hurt. Big, like you said.
Right.
But the thing is, he met in person with Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC. The government agency responsible for stopping this sort of activity has been meeting with him for various reasons over the last couple of years. You've also got the SEC, the same guy, Gary, trying to punch down this one company and promote this other one. So with all these regulations, the regulations are coming. They're needed, in fact. I mean, it's not that, the Bitcoin ethos is the don't ask permission. You can get forgiveness quicker than permission.
Mm-hmm.
Bitcoin successfully created something that is changing the world's financial mindset. No doubt about it. Many of these other crypto companies are like, well, I was too late to get in on Bitcoin, so now I'm trying to invent the next 1,000 to 1 or the next that. And there are many, but crypto is just a penny stocks game. It's if you want, again, back to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies or tokens, is like it. There was a good tweet that I held on to that a few years ago, it used to be say that Bitcoin was speculation, then that Bitcoin was investing. Now Bitcoin is just saving. It's considered that solid. And I might be a few years ahead of many of your listeners in that statement. But the fact that Bitcoin is going to be here in 10 and 20 and 100 years is just not even a question or a debate. But the other cryptos that come and go, they're like penny stocks, was the point I was trying to make. Mm-hmm. If a little bit of 1 or 5%, whatever you're comfortable, if you spend it on gambling, penny stocks, going to Vegas or whatever, but it should not be confused with investing, is what many people will pitch. For crypto, you got to be in and out. You got to buy low, you got to sell high, and you're going to have to do it 3 or 5 times the same day. That's how these big companies make money, arbitrage and things like that. Mm-hmm. The average investor might feel more comfortable just working their 8-hour job, having their family, and then having a little bit of Bitcoin come out of their bank account, or have that happen weekly, automatic, regardless of the price. Bitcoiners tend to dollar cost average. So I personally never went all in at $69,000 on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, I was just at a conference in Los Angeles area, Pacific Bitcoin, with that company I mentioned, Swan. Yeah, we're sitting back with our mouths open and eyes wide, and everyone's just like, wow, poor crypto markets. And there's little memes and tweets coming out, for Thanksgiving. "Hi, Grandma. Yes, I'm fine. No, I didn't have any money with FTX. No, I don't really understand it. Yes, my Bitcoin is still safe. And yes, I'm buying more. You should too, Grandma." That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Is that the contagion? This affects the industry. It's a really broad in people's minds, on Congress, your listeners, Bitcoin, crypto, it's all the same thing. I've tried to help a little bit, say it is such a separate thing that the only way I've ever come up with shortly defining it is the Christian Catholic thing. Whatever amount of frustration you have with trying to explain to someone, no, I'm not Catholic, unless you are, and that's. But the point is that the differences are subtle enough to where it's fine. It's understandable that you don't get it. I'm just saying is that none of this is happening with Bitcoin. The exchanges that will prove how much they have on request, and the exchanges that allow you to remove to your own wallet or to send your asset, meaning Bitcoin or Litecoin or XRP or whatever, to another person, that the money's there because you have control over it. The yield platforms, they're going to, one way or another, they may say you have to leave it here this amount, or you're going to suffer a percentage hit. Same as, we all know that lingo. Or the other thing is that when I say that I'm messing up a little bit. I apologize. Is that when the exchanges have or the bank run starts and they have to close all of the deposits or withdrawals, that's the crypto industry for you. Is that they're not offering proof of reserves. They're not welcoming regulators. And I'm not a regulation dog. I mean, a lot of the Bitcoin is saying, you know what, your regulations, you're all greedy. Your politicians, your bankers, you have just messed up the financial realm so bad that a little guy like me can never save enough to buy a house. That's what people in their 20s are facing today. And Bitcoin fixes this. Bitcoin allows you to save in a way that your money will still be there and growing 10 and 20 years into the future. Some cryptos might give you a 10 to 1 or 1,000 to 1, but you got to be quick. Like I said, it's penny stocks. And the firms that are offering you yield is because they're gambling with your money.
Right.
And the rug can and will get pulled eventually.
This is really what happened. And I wrote about this, not the crypto side of it, but I wrote about that kind of gambling for one of our chapters in the book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons. And this dealt with the rider on the black horse, who's a spirit, we believe, and his weapon is financial servitude, debt servitude. The scales that he carries in Greek, that word really means yoke, like what you put it on the neck of an ox. Everywhere else in the New Testament, that word is used. It means yoke. And in 1929, you had the investment banks and the commercial banks basically not separating out their funds. And so it's the same thing as what FTX was doing. They were taking in deposits, essentially. I mean, really, these are just digital banks. They were taking in deposits, but then they were taking it and they were gambling it on other speculative investments. And what happened in 1929, people figured it out. Interest rates started to go up. Guys couldn't meet their margin calls. Suddenly, they were folding. Guys were jumping out of windows. This led to Glass-Steagall in 1933, which was partially repealed. And so now you've got a lot of the big investment banks like JP Morgan Chase and Goldman Sachs. They all have their own commercial banks again. Not saying they're doing anything with the deposits, but, the temptation is there. So
crypto has just reinvented fractional reserve banking. That term, meaning fractional reserve, it would probably help some listeners, is that most banks in the U.S., and let's go back to prior to 2020, it was a 10% rule, basically. If you, as a bank, had $1 million in your safe, you were allowed to write checks and lend out up to $10 million.
Right.
That's money. You didn't have that $9 million. You just wrote a check and then bank to bank to bank, digital to digital to digital, account to account. Fractional reserve means you only have to have a fraction in reserve of what you're lending out. You're going to earn interest. 90% of the time, things run fine, especially when the numbers are small. Crypto and all these lending platforms, they got nuts with it. They reinvented. And that's what crypto is doing, is reinventing fiat, is reinventing hypothecation, reinventing fractional reserve. There are some interesting technologies being developed. There are a few good companies, but out of 15 or 20,000 cryptos out there, I'm very reluctant to recommend 1 or 3 to you, simply because many of the same products and services that I've recommended in the last few years, even specific to Bitcoin, those companies messed up or something like that. So it's hard to make those. It's hard to say, I think you should buy Dogecoin or Shiba Inu or anything like that. No. If you ever come to me, I'll say, if you got $10 that you're willing to throw away and on the hopes it turns into 1,000, go for it. God bless you, man. I hope it works out for you. Please don't do that with your rent money, though, or your mortgage or your car or your food and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's what it comes down to. Let the buyer beware, caveat emptor. And it has always been that case. We saw this back in 2008. Actually, for us, it was 2006. Sharon and I were early adopters in the mortgage collapse as we put our house on the market. And it crested early in St. Louis. We wound up losing a house to foreclosure, but well, God has restored it, and so we're blessed. But it was a valuable lesson. You can see this happen with just about anything out there. And the reason things went nuts with the mortgages back in 2008 and 9 is because you had the same sort of thing being done with investment banks around the world, packaging up blocks of mortgage loans, chopping them up, and reselling them as investments. This was being done with life insurance policies. I don't know if you remember the story from back in 2009, when Deutsche Bank investors were upset because they'd been sold investments based on American life insurance policies, and we weren't dying fast enough for the German investors to make it. Yeah, so
you're right. Yeah, it's really a case of nothing new under the sun. This SBF and FTX, it's huge. It's multi-billion dollars. It's in all the headlines, but it happened less than 6 months ago. The media is a little more complicit on this. I don't know how else to say it. We'll say mainstream media. For the types of pieces that the New York Times and Wall Street Journal and others are putting out, covering, they're still painting him as a hero. He's walking around the Bahamas, enjoying Thanksgiving dinner with his parents. There's pictures. There's another crypto guy, total crypto guy, BitBoy. He's down there in front of his skyscraper, live streaming. Like he was like, "Come on out and talk to me, SBF. What's up?" He's doing, he's being, even though he's been accused of many scams himself, he is actually at the moment being hailed as the only responsible journalist in all the world as far as trying to get the scoop and get some honesty. But he's down there making some attention for himself. But the crypto community is actually kind of hailing him because he's doing what the SEC and all the regulators and all the firms and Gary Gensler and all these aren't doing. This guy should not be sitting in a mansion having dinner with his parents.
No,
I wish him well, in the sense of he literally, with no conscience, no morals, no plans, is getting away with a $10 billion theft. And it looks like the regulators, because he donated a ton of money. We covered that earlier. He gave a lot of money to both Democrat and Republican side.
Yep.
There's 8 congressmen that were they were drafting legislation that had to do with this whole scenario. 5 of them are on record as receiving donations from FTX or Alameda employees or whatever. And it's really not a huge money. So 60-something% of the people that are writing the legislation were on his payroll already, or on his good side, so to speak, or vice versa. And then you have other things happening in Congress right now, like Tom Emmer going after. Others are saying, hey, someone's going to say, hey, SEC, why didn't you stop FTX? But right now, further confusing the issue, there's a few senators going, hey, SEC, that's not your sandbox. You play over here. CFTC needs to be addressing this. CFTC, why aren't you going at, or something like that? Thing is, it's such a new technology still that regulators in their 60s, 70s, 80s, understandably having trouble wrapping their heads around it, but they're being influenced, as all lobbying does, to write the laws this way or to write the laws that way. Again, I mentioned Gary Gensler. I mentioned Ripple and Ethereum. It's what's really happening here. Yeah, the scam is huge. SBF is probably not the biggest scammer. Like you said, we're a couple weeks out. We don't know what's going to be the next
How many other dominoes have fallen? Yeah,
they're going to continue to fall.
You mentioned the company Chainalysis, and I just want to throw this out there for people before we wrap up here. Chainalysis, which looks at those transactions, as you said, it just has come out that they are confirmed as a creditor in the FTX bankruptcy case. So they were investing in FTX.
Yeah, they're paid to investigate and report.
Right.
Illicit blockchain activity.
Yeah.
At the same time, if they're investing in it.
It's like the FDA and
it needs regulation. Just for the common investor who hears all these, Kim Kardashian says buy this and so I do. The crypto industry needs a ton of regulation. The Bitcoin industry the only regulation or the only laws that people are talking about with Bitcoin is, excuse me, there are privacy rights, there are privacy laws on the books that need to be obeyed. We are safe in our possessions from seizure and secure stuff like that. The only thing happening in Congress on Bitcoin is First Amendment, laws, privacy, human freedom, personal sovereignty, and stuff like that. That's the legislation happening around the Bitcoin world. The crypto world, if it's going to continue as it is, it just needs some eyeballs. You need to be able to report to someone and say, I have 9 million FTX tokens for sale. And the ability to create 109 million more if those are popular. So without a cap and without, the software or the hardware does for Bitcoin what regulators, human and politicians, does for everything else. And we see what kind of job humans have done bringing us fiat currency the last 50 years. It's about to explode. Yeah. Well, Bitcoin is designed to fix that. Crypto is copying the best parts of Bitcoin without keeping all of the good parts, the security and the uncensorability and the ability to prove how much is where at any given second.
Yeah. Guy, where do you go, or where do you recommend people go for good information on what's happening with Bitcoin and or cryptocurrency?
I happen to work freelance as a copy editor, bitcoinmagazine.com and cointelegraph.com. Both are covering it from slightly different perspectives, obviously. One covers much more of the crypto industry, where Bitcoin Magazine focuses on just bringing Bitcoin to the world economic systems. So those are two internet web sources. I am on Twitter, Guy_Malone, that if people... I post a little bit related to this stuff. It is my Bitcoin account, however, so they could contact me. By the time people are watching this in a week or more, there could be many more breaking stories. Yeah. But to me, those are sources that I'm on probably 3 or 4 dozen crypto, Bitcoin email lists. I have to look at them like every day and decide which one I want to read. On that one, I would say Decrypt is really good too. DECRYPT. They do good stuff. Mm-hmm. I think CoinDesk, I like reading theirs a lot. So there's no one source though. Right. That is the problem. There's no one ultimate. Your one source, depending on your proclivities or whatever like that, it could be that small inner voice. Listen to your gut. Hear from God. I'm sure he will help anybody with their investing decisions. But the information is covered. There's good press out there. And actually, I realize now every answer I gave you, none of it is mainstream media. And that was not intentional. Only in hindsight am I realizing, oh, yeah, where to go for good? Yeah. There's a few big names that you would think would be the go-to. They do not come to my mind as really covering this well.
Yeah, from what little I've read here over the last couple of weeks trying to get my head around this, the consensus seems to be that the corporate media does not cover crypto or Bitcoin well at all. In fact, the story about Chainalysis here as a FTX creditor comes from Decrypt. So,
oh, good.
Yeah. So, well, Guy Malone, our expert and our missionary to Roswell, a man of many talents, and just
still here doing the UFO stuff.
Yeah,
man. Well, fun with that too.
Well, like us, proving that you don't have to choose one career and just stick to that for your entire life. God bless you, brother, and Merry Christmas. We'll talk to you again in the new year, I'm sure.
Merry Christmas, Derek and Sharon. Bye-bye, y'all.
You'll find all of Guy's contact information, including a link to the presentation that he did for Skywatch TV, Is Bitcoin the Mark of the Beast, at guymalone.com. That link will be in the show notes below, vftb.net or youtube.com/Gilbert House, or wherever you are consuming this podcast, whether it's, any one of our podcast outlets, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever fine podcasts are sold, basically. You can follow us on all kinds of social media sites. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and, of course, all the new social medias, Truth Social, Gab, MeWe, Getter, Parler, at Derek P. Gilbert on all of those. We've got the virtual conference for Skywatch TV continuing through February 4th. And it actually goes for 90 days beyond that if you sign up on the last day to register, which is February 4th. The Skywatch TV virtual conference featuring Tom Horn's latest presentation, a great talk from Joel Richardson on pharmakia, my presentation on the literal location of the Valley of the Shadow of Death. It's a real place. That plus all 6 documentaries from Skywatch Films, 6 feature-length documentary films. All of that for 90 days access, regardless of when you sign up. But you have to sign up by February 4th. From the day you sign up, you get 90 days access to all of that content, and you get to watch it on your schedule. Watch what you want to watch, when you want to watch it. You control the order of the speakers, and you'll find all at defenderconference.com, defenderconference.com. There is a virtual conference coming in January from Hear the Watchman. I have agreed to give a presentation for that. Still waiting on information from Mike Kerr, and I will pass it along as soon as we get that. Our Skywatch TV Tour of Israel, that is coming up very soon, March 19th through 30th of 2023, with the optional 3-day extension to Jordan. We filled 2 buses, looking forward to filling the 3rd bus, but act quickly because they do need to make hotel reservations, and time grows short. As all of the restrictions have dropped, no vaccine required. A lot of people are now trying to make up for lost time because we missed. I mean, we were going to go in 2020 and then 21 and then 22, and it just basically didn't happen. So this will be our first trip back in 4 years, and time really moves quickly. So a lot of people trying to get over there all at the same time. Don't wait. Come on. It's a good size group, big enough that you can make friends that you will stay in touch with for years. Hence, small enough that we'll get to know all of you. And that's what we're looking forward to. More information at gilberthouse.org/travel, gilberthouse.org/travel. One program note to pass along. We've made a decision, Sharon and me, as we look ahead to 2023 in our schedule. We've got a couple of books that we want to put out. Actually, 3, probably between the 2 of us. Sharon is looking forward to getting book 9 of the Red Wing saga out there. I've got a follow-up in the works for my novel, The God Conspiracy, working on the follow-up called The God Game. And we are working on a joint project called The Gates of Hell. We're also looking forward to doing some video in Israel to put together a documentary to go along with The Gates of Hell. And we, if all goes well, plan to be in Turkey in October. So trying to do all of that and still produce 2 network television programs a week, Unraveling Revelation and Sci Friday. Something had to give. So Sci Friday will go on hiatus after episode number 300, which will be on December 30th of this year. We've been doing it for more than 7 years. We love doing the program, which is why we brought it back when the Bible's Greatest Mysteries went on hiatus. But it takes a lot more work to produce 30 minutes of television for network because you've got to make it exactly 28 minutes and 30 seconds exactly, which requires some editing. A lot more time involved in that than in doing this program or our weekly Bible study. But to compensate, we are bringing back the podcast that started it all. PID Radio is back. 1 hour a week of content, audio only, because it's a lot faster to produce the audio. That gives us more time to speak. We don't have to look at the clock and make sure we're not running overtime. So we're bringing back PID Radio. It is already available now at our app. You can also get it at pidradio.com. Any of your favorite podcatchers will have it because this was one of the very first podcasts on the internet. March of 2005, back when Apple was begging content producers to submit their podcasts. We got in early. So we are there, and we are back. So PID Radio, back. Sci Friday, going on hiatus for a while. We'll probably have another compilation disc of best of Sci Friday episodes because we had some great interviews over the past year that we think people need to see. More people than who watch the program on YouTube. Dr. Stephen Collins, Dr. Philip Sylvia, Dr. Doug Petrovich, and more. So we'll probably put together a compilation disc of some of those episodes and make those available in the new year. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to watch or listen wherever it may be. We thank our announcer, as always, the excellent D.C. Good, and remind you that A View from the Bunker is a production of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, non-commercial, no derivatives, 4.0 international license. We do this because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is A View from the Bunker.